A whistleblower is telling the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee the Jeffrey Epstein accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, is getting special treatment in prison and actively preparing a commutation application. One top prison official complained that he is, quote, sick of having to be Maxwell's B-word.
Ghislaine Maxwell is just in a completely different category than every other prisoner. She gets essentially room service behind bars. She can use the shower. She can use the gym whenever she wants to. She gets special treatment there. And unlike other prisoners who have to communicate with people outside of the prison through the very slow mail system, she's actually getting messages sent through the warden. Her presence in that camp facility itself is completely astonishing, given that they had never had a sex offender before, and sex offenders were not allowed in that camp. Got in pretty much on an overnight basis after she met with Todd Blanche, who had been Donald Trump's personal criminal defense lawyer, now working for the DOJ as the number 2 person.
Julie K. Brown is an investigative reporter for the Miami Herald, the author of Perversion of Justice, the Jeffrey Epstein story, the journalist responsible for exposing the sweetheart secret deal that became a scandal. And looks like the sweetheart deals are continuing. The difference is now they don't appear to be much of a secret. I always say the Miami of today is the America of tomorrow, and the only thing transparent in Miami is the corruption itself, and that seems to be happening here before our very eyes. The story previously was Todd Blanche meets with Ghislaine Maxwell in prison. Next thing you know, she's transferred into this Club Fed, where the quotes from her are that she is absolutely thrilled to be. She's loving prison now. It's crazy, but in the meantime, there's been a lot of very pissed off people in the Bureau of Prisons that have been sharing her emails and correspondence with journalists like Julie, and that seems to bring us to the latest news here, which is not only that she's telling people, Julie, how much she loves her new digs, her new accommodations, if you will, which are unprecedented, as I understand, in the history of the Federal Bureau of Prisons for a prisoner of her crimes and caliber. But also now she is working on getting out entirely, getting off scot-free from this 20-year sentence. What's the latest?
Well, she clearly has made it known that she wants either some kind of clemency or she wants, Trump to pardon her. I mean, it's pretty well noted that that is what she's aiming for. It seems that almost all her court options have been exhausted. The U.S. Supreme Court last month denied hearing her appeal. So there isn't a whole lot of options in the court, in the judicial courts. Of course, now she is trying some other means by appealing directly to Trump, apparently.
So we've got a case that involves, by some count, over 1,000 victims. You have a woman who is a convicted sex offender sentenced to 2 decades in federal prison. And in what we heard from the ranking member in that clip of the Judiciary Committee, Jamie Raskin, who said that it is, quote, in apparent flagrant violation of BOP policies, end quote. One, for example, that prohibits the placement of sex offenders in a minimum security facility such as this. What do we know about this deal, about the accommodations situation here?
Well, it seems to me that every time I've been following this pretty closely. And as you know, there have been a lot of leaks over the past few months. There were the leak about the so-called birthday card that Trump drew for Epstein. There have been some leaks of some emails involving Epstein that have appeared, that have implicated various new people in especially banks and some of the financial institutions. And I feel like all these leaks, I mean, this story has been out there now. I wrote about it 8 years ago, and we weren't seeing these kinds of leaks. So somebody's leaking something, and we know that Maxwell, for example, wants something. So how do you persuade someone to get what you want, but to dangle something out there? And I suspect, I can't say that this is true, but I suspect that one of the reasons why we're seeing all these leaks now is because Maxwell is in this lower security facility. She has access to computers. She has access to people that in ways that other inmates don't have access. And I think she is out there trying to, orchestrate some kind of a pardon or a clemency.
It's remarkable that one of the most famous and notorious cases of alleged sex trafficking, in some cases allegedly of minors, a case that was sensational in and of itself, but became increasingly more sensationalized by really, you could argue, the more of the right wing kind of blogosphere and podcast universe, and certainly people who are now members of the Trump administration. Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, people really, really carrying the torch for releasing the Epstein Files and getting real justice and exposing the true perpetrators who may have victimized over 1,000 women and young women. And now here we are, and these are the folks that are getting special treatment. These are the folks that we're continuing to see a cover-up of relevant evidence and information that could actually offer closure or some closure to the victims, to their families, to heal the country. And why is this happening? Why is it that the president always has kind words for Ghislaine Maxwell, of all people? Because this is not a woman who is just an enabler of Jeffrey Epstein, I understand. She was very much a perpetrator of these crimes.
Right. And I like to remind people, because I often see people really not understanding how involved and how much of a mastermind in some ways she was of his scheme to abuse young girls. I mean, she literally would go out to spas and other places where young girls would congregate, and she would literally give them her business card and say, I have a job for you. You will never have to really work. You're beautiful. Well, I have a very wealthy man who can make you a model, or who could get you through college. I mean, they promised these girls the moon. And in addition to that, she helped literally abuse them according to court testimony during our trial. There were girls, young women now, but who were young girls when this happened, who testified about how she also participated in the sexual abuse.
Now, this so-called sweetheart secret plea deal that Jeffrey Epstein struck, you had some really interesting news just a few weeks ago about this, and things that we were learning from some of the documents that are being released, and a possible future legal or business relationship that Jeffrey Epstein had with who was then one of the top Florida prosecutors on his case back in the day.
This is actually, I mean, for journalists anyway, for me, it was actually a funny story, because I was on assignment in another state when the House Oversight Committee released thousands and thousands of pages on a Friday late afternoon, commonly known as a Friday night news dump, when no one is really paying attention. And so I was with another reporter, Claire Healy, who was helping me, and we were just furiously trying to go through thousands of pages of documents. And I'm looking over her shoulder at one of the emails or one of the documents, which includes a calendar listing that mentions that he's meeting with a guy by the name of Matt Menschel. And she says his name to me, and I go, who? And she goes, Matt Menschel. And I was just, my jaw dropped, because not a lot of people would necessarily know that name, but because I've covered this story for so long, I knew that he was one of the top, the criminal, in charge of the criminal division under Alexander Acosta at the time that at least part of this sweetheart deal was negotiated. And so I just couldn't believe that he would. Now, this is years later that Epstein is meeting with Matthew Menschel, but why would you be? This is one of the most well-known, notorious sexual abuser of young girls in our history. and you are meeting with him when you were technically one of his prosecutors. I mean, why? How does this happen? Why are you meeting with him? I don't care if it was 3 days afterward or whether it was 10 years afterward. I don't see any reason a man who was your prosecutor would ever have a dinner. I mean, one of the listings said, meeting with Matt Menschel, no shellfish, meaning, it was a dinner meeting and he's allergic to shellfish.
Well, let's keep it kosher, Julie. We got to keep this meal kosher.
Yeah, right.
But let me ask you this: did you discover other conflicts in terms of maybe there was some romantic relationships during the negotiation of this plea deal that perhaps should have been disclosed or conflicted anyone out of the case?
Well, yes, because we knew that one of the things that Jeffrey Epstein did when he was trying to line up this sweetheart deal was that he found little ways to get to these prosecutors. He tried to disqualify Jeff Sloman, who was the deputy under Acosta, for example, because he had some kind of a burglary at his house. And somehow they were trying to make it that he had a conflict of interest because he testified against the burglar during the trial. I mean, he was trying to find every little way he could to get to these prosecutors. And one of the people he hired as one of his attorneys was a woman by the name of Lilian Sanchez. Now, I heard rumors from the very beginning that Lilian and Matthew Menschel had a thing, a romantic thing. Of course, I couldn't really prove it. There was no way to report it at the time. But after my series ran, the DOJ did a big investigation. Buried in the footnote of that investigation was a notation that Lilian Sanchez had dated Matthew Menschel. And it was like a tiny little footnote in the report. And so it had been confirmed that she had, and she took over that negotiation toward the end. So, she was very much involved with negotiating this deal, at least at one point with Menschel. The two of them were working this out together. So it's just incredible. I mean, when you look at how the deal was negotiated and the questions about that and the questions about the way that the whole thing was, Epstein was given such kid glove treatment. And now look at what is happening with Ghislaine Maxwell and the treatment she is now getting in the criminal justice system. I mean, there are so many parallels, and it is extremely disturbing.
And there was a moment, though, before these two alleged lovers got involved in the negotiations, that there was a very real, there was a 60-count indictment for sex trafficking that had been proposed by then the lead line prosecutor on the case, right? Like this was moving along in an otherwise normal and just kind of system until what?
Well, Matthew Menschel was the person that sort of put the kibosh on it, according to the lead prosecutor. She was interviewed by Justice Department investigators quite a few years ago, and she's basically quoted in a letter or an email that she wrote, objecting to the fact that they offered Epstein this deal without even running it by her initially. So she was sort of told, okay, little girl, go off in your office. Let the boys handle it. Was sort of what happened, and this deal went through, and she had to sort of then sign on to it. I'm still mystified about how Acosta testified before the committee that the lead prosecutor, her name, by the way, is Anne Marie Villafana. He said that she totally agreed with this deal, and it's just hard for me to believe that she completely signed on to it, because she was working so hard to put him into prison.
Julie K. Brown, what is next? This is the gift that keeps on giving, this story. As you said, you first started covering it almost a decade ago, and it's still going with new breaks and new news and new information. Where do you think this takes us next? I'm guessing it's not the release of the Epstein Files.
Everybody is, I have to say, I think that the way that this has turned so political sort of obscures really what's important about this. And what is important are the way that the victims are still being treated as an afterthought, and the fact that this is a crime. This isn't a political, it shouldn't be political. It should be treated as a crime. There are real victims who were children when this happened. And it's just, it's sort of getting out of control in a way, because people are treating this like a political story instead of a criminal case.
Yep. And a tragedy for a lot of people.
And a tragedy. And I think, to be honest with you, I even think that the Oversight Committee and the Judiciary Committees don't understand this case. They really don't. If they did, they would have Marie Villafana on the stand. If they really wanted to know what would happen, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing now, which is, I really think, a lot of grandstanding, a lot of, appearing on television, trying to, make, like I said, use this for political reasons instead of really getting to the truth.
Julie K. Brown, author of Perversion of Justice, the Jeffrey Epstein Story. And read her at MiamiHerald.com. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
The breakthrough. After nearly 6 weeks, the federal government shutdown looks set to end.
We have support from enough Democrats.
5 new Senate Democrats joined 3 others, voting to no longer block the reopening of the government in exchange for a concession that Senate Republicans had been offering for weeks to hold a vote on extending Obamacare subsidies. It is sparking a deep divide among Democrats. Many progressive Democrats are accusing their Democratic colleagues of caving by not getting Republicans to agree to more.
I think it was a terrible, terrible vote. At a time when we have a broken healthcare system, this is going to make our healthcare system even worse.
Democrats never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And this sort of exemplifies why I am an NPA right now. No party affiliation, which is how I started my life as an 18-year-old man in Miami in 1996, voting in my first presidential election. Then was an NPA for most of my life, I was a Democrat for less time than Donald Trump was a Democrat. I'll put it to you that way. And switched back to NPA last year because of just this kind of foolishness. I mean, just this lack of a backbone, this fecklessness, this spinelessness.
But the only pro in this situation is people getting back to work?
Yes, some people getting back to work, but what was the sacrifice for, Roy? What was this about? We were taking a stand here. When I say we, I don't mean Democrats, because I'm not a Democrat. I'm talking about Americans who wanted to ensure that there was no compromise on their health care. People are going back to work, Roy, but their premiums are going to be like, I don't know, 1,000 times more expensive. What's the difference if you're working or not? People work so they can pay for their health insurance, they can pay for the rent, they can pay for their groceries. Nobody can afford any of that shit, Roy. So what was the point of this sacrifice and this shutdown and taking a stand if you're going to fold like a cheap suit the second you get what you want, which is everybody's votes in the election last week? That's what's so cynical about it too, Roy, is that this shit was all in play and this was all, they were just waiting for election day to go by, and then the Democrats struck this deal all of a sudden out of nowhere. And what this does is it reinforces the cynicism of Democrats, independents, NPAs who say, oh, it doesn't matter who I vote for. Both sides are the same. It doesn't matter. None of them are looking out for the working people or for the farmers or for the. And I don't think that's true, but it does reinforce and that kind of attitude amongst people. And it discourages people from voting is what it does. And the Democrats were winning the messaging war. They were winning elections, as evidenced by this past week. And then they're like, no, we good. I mean, what the fuck? It doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying ride hungry people, the momentum of hungry and out of work people into the midterms next year. I'm saying stand for something. Okay? Nobody can afford $8,000 a month for health insurance. I don't care if you're getting your job back. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I just don't understand what they're doing. And the second I get all these fundraising text messages from, Democrats, and I'm like, get out of here with that. Get out of here. This was total and utter capitulation. There is no deal. What is the deal? Representative Angie Nixon, I'm sorry. I'm just ranting and raving, and she's waiting so patiently there with some pretty creepy Funko Pops behind her on the shelf. Angie Nixon represents Duval County, Jacksonville, where she is a native, a proud daughter of Jacksonville, who she now represents in the Florida State House. Deal? Is this a deal or no deal? What is the and in a deal, doesn't somebody get something in exchange? What did the Democrats get here? What did the American people get out of this Senate deal?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me. And, Billy, I would say in some ways you are correct. Unfortunately, what caving right now just basically reaffirms that Republicans and Donald Trump can basically inflict harm and terrorize people and starve people without actually governing, right? It's really just a way in which they're using cruelty as a shortcut to power. And so it's very unfortunate that nearly 20 million people are potentially going to lose health care, or their health care is going to rise to a point where they cannot afford it. And so it's very unfortunate. And, I think we need to start looking inwards as Democrats to make sure that we are looking out for working families and low income people, and really, trying to make sure that their quality of life is improving and that we're pushing transformative change.
There was a promise. There was a promise from Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Senate Democrats, and we heard it time and time again from some of the 8 senators who voted for this, which is that there will be no compromise, there will be no deal, there will be no vote to reopen the government unless those healthcare subsidies on how to fund those are on the table, at least for a year, at least for some period of time. But instead, they made a deal. They voted to reopen the government with absolutely nothing but like the hope of a promise of a plan in the near future to have a vote for these subsidies that won't pass. Like what happened? What?
I mean, let's be real, right? Like both parties, and I am a Democrat, right?
Nobody's perfect.
Billy. But both parties, the majority of them, I just say like they're serving the same people. They're serving the same corporations, right? And so I think we really need to look at getting corporations out of politics. Like there needs to be some critical reform happening, right? Like corporate PACs should not be allowed to donate to candidates, right? Like those are the people that are driving the policies that we are seeing throughout our country and definitely throughout the state of Florida. And until we do that, working class families will never actually have the opportunity to have their voices heard. And so I think it's time we start looking at electing people who aren't necessarily millionaires, right? Like who are actually working families, because, I'm getting screwed. Many of my constituents are getting screwed. And so we have to make sure we are representing people, we're electing people who represent the people, who are only beholden to the people and not the folks that make billions and billions of dollars and continue to pad their campaign coffers.
Well, it seems like the American voter seems to be pretty upset about this decision that these Democrats have made here in the Senate. Do you believe that some of these Democrats could get primaried? And is there a chance that AOC might be gunning for Chuck Schumer's job?
I think there are a lot of folks that are going to be primaried. Hell, I've primaried someone before, and now I am a sitting member of the House of Representatives here in the state of Florida. And so, I am not against, primarying people if they are not doing what their constituents need, right? Like right now, our families are suffering. They're suffering. We had 42 million Americans who were starving, right? And it was simply because people want to play political games. And right now, we don't have time for that. There are people who are living on the streets. There are people who are so afraid to live in this country that are trying to figure out ways in which they can get access to a passport so that they can leave. We deserve to be in this country. And unfortunately, folks like Donald Trump and the Republicans that are of his ilk think otherwise. And cruelty is the point. Again, like, they are using cruelty in a way so that they can have a shortcut to power. And this is really harming people. And so again, like, I think we need to get money, this big time money, out of politics, and things would definitely change. If you had Democrats and Republicans who could only get campaign donations from regular working people, I think that they would only listen to regular working people as it relates to policies that they would push.
I want to clarify, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, is a United States representative. So
she's in the House. Yeah.
She's in the House, so she is not gunning yet for Senator Schumer's job. She would have to run for Senate in New York first, but that doesn't mean she's not out for Hakeem Jeffries' job, which could also be up for grabs. I mean, he represents a new generation of Democrats, but he really seems to strike a lot of people as being, I guess, what Representative Nixon might not call him, but in general, like these corporate Democrat type of characters. And I have to wonder, Representative Nixon, are you insinuating that maybe some of these 8 Democrats were not necessarily acting in the best interest of their constituents, but rather on behalf of some special interest, insurance companies, something with this vote? What are you insinuating there?
I would say that a lot of folks right now are just caving to being bullied, particularly by Donald Trump and those Republicans in DC right now. And a lot of our constituents, what do we get in return, right? Like, the Republicans have never acted in good faith, especially recently, right? And so now, what do we have to show for folks going
a promise to vote
food?
Maybe in December or whatever the hell this nebulous, amorphous deal is?
Exactly. And so they have not acted in good faith. And at the end of the day, a lot of these people are really working to destroy our communities. And so working class people are seeing that, right? Like, folks who are negatively impacted, the people who had the hundreds of thousands of people who were without pay for over a month, they're pissed, right? Some of them may have gone into the foreclosure process or possibly faced eviction, definitely had issues paying for childcare, which is super expensive. And so now they have nothing in return. And so people are pissed. And again, it is definitely time for us to potentially look at new leadership to come in that's really going to be representative of people and what we care about and the needs that we have, and not just those corporations.
Last question before you go. I know you don't have, I think, any kind of runoffs coming up in December in Jacksonville, but we have them down here in the city of Miami. I know they have them in Orlando. And these are nonpartisan elections, but as we've talked about on this show many times, they get very, the political parties get very involved in these local, supposedly nonpartisan elections. But you are traveling the state right now. I know you were in South Florida, or you were in South Florida very recently. What is the response on the ground from people who really thought that the Democrats were fighting for something here, and the sacrifice was to some end, to some sort of goal here? I mean, I think the Democrats should be concerned. Everybody's concerned about turnout in a runoff. You know that nobody shows up. Barely anybody shows up in November of 2025. I don't know. We didn't have 30% turnout in the city of Miami, and we'll get half that, if not less than half of that, in a December runoff. So what I'm asking is that are Democrats now a little there was a blue wave last week. Are Democrats a little less motivated, a little less excited about turning out because of this attitude that seems to be pervasive when shit like this goes down, which is that, well, what's the difference? We come out and vote and we get screwed irregardless.
Yeah, so I definitely think that this may have an impact on turnout. However, it's going to be incumbent upon us elected leaders to let folks know that the Republicans are really to blame for the majority of the pain and suffering that we are facing right now. And so now we have a unique opportunity to really start meeting people where they are, right? Like having these going and taking part in these mutual aid efforts and really letting folks know, right? Like the reason that they need this mutual aid in the first place is because Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress just really, again, want to harm people, and they want to basically diminish the working class and allow their friends and family to get richer, right? Again, cruelty is the point here, and folks have to realize their power. And so I am hoping and also going to definitely put in the work to make sure that people wake up and realize that they need to get their power back, and we have to work together, right? Like at the end of the day, Republicans, Democrats, independents, we're all getting screwed by the folks that are in DC in power right now. And so, and some of the folks that are in power here in the state. And so if we want to see a change, we got to start electing people who care about us, who come from us, who are us, right? And really want to see transformative change. And I think even though there was a little caving that happened a few days ago, I think that we can still fight back to ensure that everyone will have the opportunity to get their needs met if we elect the right people and we push for that.
A quick poll before we go. How many of us think that we are going to get a $2,000 tariff dividend check? Quick show of hands. Is that a no? Is that no?
That's a hell no.
How many of us got that $5,000 Doge rebate check earlier this year? Did anybody get that? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
How many corporations got kickbacks and no big contracts? I'm sure it's quite a bit.
Yes, corporate welfare, even during a shutdown, corporate welfare is alive and well and flowing.
At an all-time high, Billy. At an all-time high.
And don't forget Argentina.
Don't
20 million? Was
40,
it 20 million?
40 billion.
It was
40 billion.
Yeah, don't cry for me, Argentina.
And the farmers here got screwed.
Don't they always? Representative Angie Nixon of the great county of Duval, great city of Jacksonville.
You got Billy. You got to say it right.
Duval.
It's Duval. Get it right.
Hang on, I feel like Howard Stern. WNBC. Hang on, I got it. Give it to me again.
Duval.
All right, hang on. Duval.
Thank you, Billy.
Great
job.
It's a work in progress.
You know, I'm going to miss Joe Carollo when he's gone. We've got only like a month or so left of his political career, and I got, part of me, I'm doing a little bit of a touchdown dance inside, a bit of a victory lap. I'm like Mike McDaniel cruising by a Buffalo Bills bar. Part of me is that, and then the other part of me is that not going to have Joe Carollo to kick around anymore.
Yeah, that was some good content being provided by one Joe Carollo.
Really does. It feels like the end of two eras. With both two generations, in fact, with Joe Carollo and Francis Suarez. And this election, as we said last week, is really a referendum on the Miami Mafia and the dynastic political crime families that have plagued this community for so long. So the Suarezes are done, right? Xavier Suarez came in, I don't even know what he came in, a distant 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 12th, I don't even know. And, of course, Francis Suarez is term limited out. And Referendum 4 that passed on the ballot with 79% of the vote, that is a lifetime term limit for Francis Suarez. He has served 8 years as a city commissioner, 8 years as city mayor. He can never run for city of Miami government ever again. I'm certain his plan was to lie low and then come back like his dad did and run for the same job. He cannot do that anymore. I believe his dad can, because I don't know that he served. He might have. I don't know that he served a total of 8 years as mayor, because he was removed from office, as you might recall, for voter fraud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Diaz La Portilla, of course, came in with barely 5-ish% of the vote, about the same as Xavier Suarez. So the Diaz La Portilla dynasty is done. But here's the thing. Frank Carollo is still on the ballot. That lawsuit is still pending this week. So the Carollo dynasty is not done yet. There could still be another cake with a mugshot on it that I need to present in edible icing at the city commission meeting. So stay tuned. The Carollos,
going to be a punching bag.
Carollo Cowboys may live to ride another day. Cocaine's.